Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way Yorkville. Happy Monday evening. Hope you guys had a great weekend, a relaxing weekend, a rejuvenating weekend. But now it's Monday and it's back to the grind. All right. So I'm going to be going over today part two out of a two-part series. Weight loss resistance is a symptom. Okay. So this is going to be very interesting because a lot of people are having problems losing weight. So I'm going to go over some of the culprits behind it, some of the research behind it, and give you guys some solutions as far as what you guys can do. If you are watching right now, if you're on Facebook, because we're broadcasting, you can see the slides on Facebook and on YouTube and on Rumble. If you can watch that, make sure, guys, that you say hello. Let me know where you are watching from as well. And also, if you're catching this part today, make sure at some point you go back and watch part one, because I talked a lot. I get this question a lot. I talked a lot about some of these weight loss drugs, why I have a problem with them, why they can cause all kinds of issues. And today I'm going to continue on that. I'm going to talk about weight loss resistance as really a symptom of a bigger problem that's going on. So this is going to be interesting, guys. And I know that this is kind of a rehash of what I've done probably about a year ago, but I've added a lot of things to it, especially. So part one, what about these new weight loss drugs? Part two, weight loss resistance is a symptom. I'm going to show you what in fact it is a symptom of. Now, if you guys are watching this and you can see the slides and you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, if you're watching on Instagram, hi Instagram, make sure that you follow. Give us a follow, give us a like, make sure that you share this video as well, because I know that people will find tremendous benefit over what I am going to go over with you tonight. So if you can see the slides and you're watching on YouTube, Rumble, and on Facebook, make sure that you like our page. Please make sure that you share this video as well. And then, guys, coming up, because I know people reach out to me every single week, our next in-person inflammation event is going to be Tuesday, May 14th at 6 o'clock p.m. Inflammation is huge. Everyone knows that inflammation is a major, major driver of illness and disease, but not a lot of people know where, in fact, it's coming from. So if you're having problems with weight loss, if you're having problems with your hormones, with infertility, thyroid disease, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, any autoimmune condition for that matter, and also any problems with your hormones, guys, please stop trying to balance your hormones. Hormones are responders. They respond to inflammatory triggers. I'm going to show you that here in just a second. But if you're from the Chicagoland area, please make sure you go to our link tree, which you'll see it on the profile, and make sure that you register for our next upcoming inflammation event. This is going to be Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, May 14th at 6 o'clock p.m. This is an in-person event. So if you're watching from Europe, please don't register for it. This is an in-person event. Every person that becomes a patient comes to an inflammation talk. We're not trying to punish you. We're not trying to waste your time, but we know that there's a tremendous gap that needs to be bridged. We're trying to help you bridge that gap so you know what needs to happen next. So you'll find tremendous benefit if you register for this next in-person event. Approach to inflammation, guys, please make sure you get registered for it. I'd love to see you guys there. And I know we already have probably 10 to 15 people registered for that event. So make sure you register for it on our Linktree profile, just right above us on our page, before our space runs out, because we only have so much space for so many people too. Now, if you have noticed, we do have a new Linktree. And so if you can see the slides here, if you click on that link, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on Facebook, even you'll see it on YouTube. If you're watching on Rumble, you'll see it in the comments, the link to actually the Linktree. And if you follow that, you'll be able to register directly for the inflammation event with me, to work with me in person. In addition to that, you'll see I uploaded a free download, the Wellness Way No Sugar Nutrition Guide. And so you'll be able to download that for free. I'm going to talk about insulin resistance, why that is so important. And then I'm also going to talk about high intensity workouts and how that helps improve insulin resistance, even weight loss resistance. And there's also a free ebook that you can download for home workouts with minimal equipment. Okay. There's about 75 workouts in that free ebook. And I've done every single one of those workouts. But it's really designed to help you put on some muscle mass and also help to change the way that you are working out. High intensity exercise, I'm going to show you, is one of the best things to do in order to help improve insulin sensitivity as well. So make sure you catch those free downloads before I take them down. You can find that on our Linktree page to register for the inflammation event, the free no sugar guideline that you can download, and also that home workout ebook. So take advantage of that, guys. Here's your opportunity. These are free gifts that we have on our Linktree page. Okay. Now, weight loss resistance is really a symptom. Okay. It's really, really a symptom. I'm already seeing the carnivore things come on in. Here come the carnivores. I've answered this question probably 10 or 15 times. But no, carnivore is not a long-term solution, just so you know. Okay. But weight loss resistance is a symptom of other things that are going on. And I know that everybody who's are weight loss coaches and things like that, they always talk about calories in and calories out. And I'm guessing if you're watching this right now, you have probably done this whole calories in and calories out. Like you've tried for 6 months just to eat a salad and nothing is moving the needle. And so it gets a little bit more nuanced than just calories in, calories out. I'm going to go over that with you in just a second. Okay. So you have to go a little bit more nuanced than just counting your calories all the time. In fact, people have tried that. And in fact, I had a young woman who came to me, tremendous bloating, weight gain. She would gain 9 pounds after she would eat. And she couldn't figure out what was going on. The doctor said it's all in your head. And you probably have body dysmorphia. So she recommended, instead of actually doing a proper food allergy test and a proper stool test, told her to get psychological counseling instead. So what are some of the culprits that are involved in weight loss resistance? Okay. Number one, these are some of the players that you have to consider. Number one is inflammation. Okay. Now I want you to think of this. If you have a high amount of inflammation, especially around the gastrointestinal system, that's going to carry a lot of water. I want you to think of this. If you sprain your ankle, it's going to get swollen and it's going to carry more water. So a lot of people are carrying a lot of water weight, especially after you eat and you get on the scale and you gain 9 pounds. You didn't gain 9 pounds of fat. It's just a lot of swelling and inflammation. And that's why you're carrying a lot more water. Number two, you have to look at glycogen. Okay. So glycogen is stored sugar stored in muscles and liver cells. And that will also carry with you a lot of water as well. And that's why someone who they fast for 3 days, they don't eat anything, and they lose 20 pounds, they think, oh, fasting is amazing. I'm like, yeah, you lost a lot of water weight. You probably lost a lot of inflammation because not eating anything can create no inflammation. And also you probably burn through a lot of your glycogen stores, which is also going to carry a lot of water. What's interesting, though, is if you notice that people start reducing their sugar, their face actually gets a lot more defined as a result. Some of the culprits. Is the thyroid a culprit? It can be if you have an undiagnosed thyroid issue that's going on. Remember, most thyroid issues are an immune system issue that's due to an immune response. But the thyroid hormone is actually what makes up, hey, how quickly is my metabolism going? And in fact, if you really want to see if you do have a thyroid issue that's going on, a lot of times what you'll see very high triglycerides. And the reason why is because it will actually slow down liver function. You'll see your triglycerides go up too. You have the issue with toxicity, guys. And just remember, where are toxins stored? It's not stored in your liver. They're stored in your fat cells. So if the liver is lacking the enzymes to be able to break down fat and properly be able to metabolize toxins, it will stay within the fat cells. I told someone earlier today, because she's having a terrible time with any kind of weight loss. And she's like, oh, doc, but like 15 years ago, it worked so well. Now it's not working anymore. Well, she's pre-diabetic, massively inflamed. And this is why it wasn't moving the needle for her. And then you also have the idea of insulin resistance, okay? Insulin resistance, which has to do with a lot of sugar and having some issue, because where primarily is insulin resistance happening is happening in the liver. So these are some of the culprits that you have to consider, but a lot of people aren't considering any of these things, especially when it comes to weight loss resistance. A lot of people just want to go on some kind of Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, some kind of GLP-1 agonist. But I'm going to show you why there's problems with that. This is a continuation. Make sure you go back and watch part 1. Now, this comes from MD Anderson Cancer Center, straight from MD Anderson Cancer Center. And this is what they say. How does insulin resistance affect cancer risk? Now, here's what they say. If you are insulin resistant, and by the way, most doctors aren't measuring your insulin levels. I'll show you that here in just a second. If you are insulin resistant, you are more likely to create fat cells and not be able to break down fat cells. The resulting weight gain, inflammation, and hormone disruptions raise your risk for up to 13 types of cancer. So, being insulin resistant increases your risk for cancer. Independent of weight, insulin increases cell production, reduces cell death. So it increases cell production and reduces cell death. That means there's more opportunity for something to go wrong and cancer to develop. Long-term increased insulin raises your risk for breast, prostate, and colorectal cancers, yet those medications are doing it when you take it. They're increasing insulin production. And MD Anderson Cancer Center says long-term increased insulin raises your risk for breast, prostate, and colorectal cancers. Now, why would that be? Because insulin is a very anabolic. It's very muscle building. And I'm going to show you this in just a second. And you'll notice that if you eat a bunch of bad carbs and things like that, you'll actually will. It's easier to gain a little bit more muscle and things like that. Here's my example. You guys ever heard of a dirty bulk? Have you ever heard of a dirty bulk? And you're like, I've never heard of that. Well, if you follow any kind of bodybuilding circles, and if you have an individual who is a hard gainer, having a hard time being able to put on weight, then sometimes some of these coaches will recommend a dirty bulk. And what's a dirty bulk? This is eating very high calorie, very high insulin forming foods like pastries, ice cream, candy, milkshakes. And the reason why is that they're not dense. They're quickly digested. They cause a huge insulin response, and the large amounts of insulin is very anabolic. Okay. So, and in fact, just go ahead and Google dirty bulk and you'll see people that are doing it. I'm not saying that you necessarily need to do that. But what I'm saying is if you eat high insulin types of foods, then that's why they say don't do this for a long period of time. That's why they actually call it a dirty bulk. All right. So, it can be very, very anabolic. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily what you do, but I want you to think of this. There are a lot of people who actually eat this way. And this is considered the standard American diet. So this is why this can cause a lot of issues. Now, I'm going to give you a lab example of someone who came in, felt really horrible, was a type 2 diabetic, and this was the first time that anyone had measured his insulin levels. And so we looked at his glucose. He had uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, but the doctor that was managing his case was giving him insulin. Yet it just wasn't working anymore. So he was extremely insulin resistant. And look at some of his initial labs. His fasting glucose was at 147. You can see elevated liver enzymes and liver toxicity that's going on. So his liver wasn't doing very well. And you can see his hemoglobin A1C at 9.0, which put him into past pre-diabetes, but full-blown type 2 diabetic. Now, I want you to see something. This was his insulin levels at 982. This was the first time that anyone had ever measured his insulin levels at 982. You know what your fasting insulin levels should be at? About 3 to 5. Yet his was at 982. High C-reactive protein, which was very, very inflamed. And then you actually notice his testosterone, his total testosterone was sitting at about 190. You know what 190 makes you as a man? A very awesome roommate. Now, when we saw this level of massive insulin resistance, we put him on a no sugar diet immediately. And within 30 days, his insulin levels went from about 900 down to 90, still way too high. But you could see he started to lose was tremendous amount of weight. You could see things were changing. And you know what the sad thing about this was that he thought, this is the only thing that I need to do. I'm done. I don't need your help. He was diagnosed with cancer about 3 months later that had spread to his liver, and he died about 2 to 3 months after his diagnosis. Okay. And Now, if you look at this, remember what we said is that how can having an insulin level at 982, how can that not form cancer? It's impossible because remember, it's very, very anabolic. And look at any kind of cancer. Cancer has way more receptors for insulin, especially. So that's an unfortunate thing that happened. But this was something that was properly medically managed, especially. So if you look at how do these popular weight loss medications work, and the first one I talked about what on part one were these GLP-1 agonists, Mounjaro, Wegovy, some of these that were formerly type 2 diabetes medications. So how do they actually work? Well, number one, they slow gastric emptying, which means you're going to have food that's going to sit in the stomach for a longer period of time so that you feel fuller longer. And in fact, slowed gastric emptying is a medical condition known as gastroparesis. This is why people run into problems. And then number two, what they do is they also increase insulin secretion. Remember, insulin is very anabolic and it should be at certain levels. So why do people have side effects from being on the medication? Well, they might already have delayed gastric emptying, known as gastroparesis, and the meds just make it worse and it just piles on it even more. So this is why, guys, that you need things to exit the stomach in the right amount of time. So what delays gastric emptying? What will delay gastric emptying, or what slows down the emptying of your stomach? Number one, it's going to be stress. Okay. Low stomach acid is a consequence of being under stress. And people talk about too much stomach acid. I'm like, no, that doesn't happen. It's too low a stomach acid that's caused by stress, whether it's mental, chemical, and physical. It's what we talk about all the time. That low stomach acid will cause your food to stay in the stomach for a longer period of time. So what delays gastric emptying? Stress. And then number two, yes, absolutely. Medications can cause it. Opioids, SSRIs, blood pressure meds, allergy meds can all delay gastric emptying. And in fact, I remember an example of a woman who was having terrible gastrointestinal issues. And they didn't start until the doctor put her on opioid medication because she had a lot of chronic joint pain, things like that. She was able to get off of all of her opioids medication. And it wasn't until she got off of all of her opioid medication did her gastrointestinal system return back to normal. In fact, not only did she have delayed gastric emptying, but she also was very, very low in pancreatic enzymes. And the doctor wanted to give her pancreatic enzymes a prescription for it that cost about $1,350 a month out of her own pocket. And I said, well, in the time being, why don't you just take some pancreatic enzymes that we have that cost about $35? The doctor looked at the bottle and said, yeah, I guess that would be just as good. $1,350 versus $35 per month. You go ahead and do the math. Which one is better for you? So I want to say this. They are essentially treating weight loss the same way that they treat type 2 diabetes. They really are. That's why some of these drugs are just an extension of some of these type 2 diabetic medications. So they're treating it the same way. But when you go back and you look at that one person's labs and they were treating it with insulin, is insulin levels over 900, why is that not a problem? And now I want you to think of this. Medically appropriate treatment of type 2 diabetes leads to more meds and worsening insulin resistance. I just gave you an example of that. That's why they say you got to be on these weight loss meds for the rest of your life. And doctors are like, yeah, that's because you have some kind of disease. But if they make insulin resistance worse, then how can withdrawing off that, your pancreas isn't able to keep up? That's why we talk about pancreatic fatigue. Here's the example that I went over just briefly, just a little bit a while ago. Look at this guy's insulin levels at 982. And in reality, we like to see insulin levels at 3 to 5. Oh man, this was just terrible. Absolutely terrible. High inflammatory levels, low testosterone, things like that. So how do we get this effect? How do we start dealing with weight loss resistance? Okay. Well, number one, slow your gastric emptying. Okay. So slow the amount of of emptying of your stomach so that you can feel fuller for a longer period of time. So what are some things that slow down gastric emptying? Well, eat foods that take longer to digest. And this is going to be protein, fat, fruits, and vegetables. Here's what it's not. It's not a little Debbie snack cake. That will go through you very, very quickly because it's very easy to break down. So eat foods that take longer to digest. Guys, protein, fats, they take longer to digest or to break down. So they're going to sit in your stomach for a longer period of time. And also fruits and veggies have more volume to them. So guys, broccoli, a plate of broccoli will have way more volume and a lot less calories than a plate of Snickers bars. I will tell you that. So eat food that takes longer to digest: protein, fats, fruits, and vegetables. Number two, don't increase insulin secretion. What you need to do is you need to become more sensitive to it. This is one of the biggest things that people fail to understand is they just, oh, if I could just increase my insulin secretion, that may work for a short period of time, but there's going to be a consequence to pay for it. So how do you become more sensitive to it? Number one, stop your sugars. Okay. Eat foods that have a glycemic index under 50. And this is why I have the no sugar diet on there. How do you become more sensitive to insulin? High intensity exercise. That's why we have a resource for you to do high intensity exercise, the ebook that we have. Number three, control your stress. I'm going to show you why stress can be a culprit in this. Number four, short chain fatty acid production. And then number five, build muscle mass. All of these things will help you become more sensitive to insulin. So here's an article from Science Daily out of the University of Turku. High intensity, this was about 7 years ago, high intensity interval training rapidly improves diabetics' glucose metabolism. New research reveals that high intensity interval training increases glucose metabolism in muscles as well as insulin sensitivity in type 2 diabetes. After just a 2-week training period, the glucose uptake in thigh muscles returned to a normal level. Isn't that amazing how quickly the body starts to respond? When was the last time that a doctor actually told you to do high intensity exercise, let alone showed you how to do it? Okay. Now, psychological stress. Here's an article that's about 10 years old, but it's still true. Out of PubMed, acute psychological stress results in the rapid development of insulin resistance. So how are you guys doing when you talk about psychological stress? Okay. Psychological stress can play a huge role in insulin resistance, mainly because of how you dump cortisol into the body. And everybody talks about how cortisol, the body is messing up. No, it's not. The body is never messing up. It's not making a mistake. But what's happening is you are having a stress response that's causing the dump of cortisol. And what is that doing? That's always mobilizing your blood sugars all the time. It's mobilizing the blood sugars. And that's why you have to get your stress under control. And if you can't get your stress under control, this is why California Poppy can help so well, especially. Now, modulation of short chain fatty acids is a potential therapy method for type 2 diabetes. Okay. Short chain fatty acids. So this is why helping to become more sensitive to insulin and short chain fatty acids. Short chain fatty acids have been shown to increase insulin sensitivity and promote glucose homeostasis. So modulation of short chain fatty acids could provide a unique approach to type 2 diabetes treatment. In this review, we discuss recent studies that provide evidence for the role of microbial short chain fatty acids, acetate, propionate, and butyrate in type 2 diabetes pathogenesis. So what are short chain fatty acids? This is basically the metabolites of your microbiome, but you have to feed it the food, and the food is fiber. So the food is actually fiber, and what they give off are known as short chain fatty acids. So are there food and supplements that help with insulin secretion? The answer is yes. And what are they? I would actually say the first thing that you need to look at is, in fact, potassium. Okay. So if you are potassium deficient, it will affect insulin secretion. But are there other foods that can help with insulin secretion? Yes, olive oil, coconut oil, avocados. And then what's interesting is gymnema. So gymnema has been shown to help not only block sugars at the intestines or slow down the absorption of sugars, but it's also been shown to help with the release of insulin. Here's an article from about 4 years ago. The effect of Gymnema administration on glycemic control, insulin secretion, and insulin sensitivity in patients with impaired glucose tolerance. Gymnema administration in patients with impaired glucose tolerance decreased A1C, increasing insulin sensitivity. There were also improvements in anthropometric measures and also the lipid profile. So they helped with a lot of body fat measurements, but they also help people with their specific lipids and things like that. When was the last time that your doctor actually recommended taking Gymnema? Now, do we have people take Gymnema? The answer is yes, but I don't want them to take it forever. I want them to get their lifestyle under control so that they don't need to be on some of those things. Are there foods and supplements that help with insulin sensitivity? The answer is yes. So there are things that can slow the absorption of sugars. There are things that can also increase insulin release. But I would actually rather have you become more sensitive to insulin as well. And what are some of the things? Berberine, number one, and fiber. So I don't recommend a berberine supplement, guys, but there are things like golden seal and Oregon grape that contain berberines that can actually help. And in fact, a lot of these berberines can actually act like metformin. Okay. And that's why if someone is really, really having issues when it comes with their blood sugars, that's why we'll start them on a certain level of berberine and then increase the doses to tolerance after they've gotten a little bit used to it as well. So here's an article from PubMed in berberine and the treatment of diabetes mellitus, a review. All right. So here's what they say. Berberine is an alkaloid found in plants. It has neuroprotective, anti-inflammatory, hypolipidemic activities. The research proves that it is also strongly impacts carbohydrate metabolism. The compound also produces also protects pancreatic B cells, beta cells that are producing insulin, and increases sensitivity to insulin in peripheral tissues via the induction of GLUT1 and GLUT4 and insulin type 1 receptor activity. In the intestines, it blocks alpha glucosidase, contributing to glucose absorption decrease. Its interference in intestinal flora reduces levels of monosaccharides and suppresses diabetes mellitus complication development. Okay. Now, sometimes with certain berberines, we'll give them if we have a stool test because there are certain berberines that can change and influence the microbiome. This is absolutely plays a huge role in your sensitivity to insulin and blood sugar control and things like that. So what about fiber? Okay. So what about fiber? So plain berberine doesn't exist. It has to be extracted from your plants. So total insoluble and soluble dietary fiber intake and insulin resistance and blood pressure in adolescence. So now they looked at fiber intake when it came to adolescence. Here's what they say. Both insoluble and soluble fiber intakes were inversely associated with fasting insulin. So basically what they found is the higher the fasting insulin, the less fiber intake was associated with it. But they looked at 754 adolescents and only two of them actually met their fiber intake recommendation. Jeez. Only two of them out of 754. Now you wonder why so many kids are struggling, already having insulin sensitivity issues in their teens, especially with 2 out of 754 are meeting their daily fiber intake. So what's some good fiber that you can start to incorporate? Well, you got soluble and you got insoluble. The best soluble, and this is not an exhaustive list, but broccoli, avocados, Brussels sprouts, and carrots are a good source of soluble fiber. And insoluble fiber are things that your body cannot break down. Chicory root, potato starch. These are good things that can feed the microbiome and help them to produce short chain fatty acids that are helping with blood sugar control, especially. But wait, there's more. There's more to this story because now you have to look at environmental toxicity, which is playing a role as well. This comes from the Lancet from about 15 years ago. And here's what they said in the Lancet: environmental pollution and diabetes, a neglected association. Using cross-sectional data from 1999 to 2002, U.S. National Health and Examination Survey, um, Dookie Lee and colleagues report a strong correlation between insulin resistant and serum concentration of persistent organic pollutants. The result was a surprise for many people working in diabetes research because most studies to date have focused on the effects of genetics and the westernization of dietary habits and lifestyle while ignoring the potential effect of xenobiotics or certain types of toxins. Nevertheless, as discussed by Porta, an increased number of reports suggest that chronic dietary exposure to and accumulation of low concentrations of environmental pollutants within the body might also be associated with the genesis of diabetes. Ignoring the potential effect of xenobiotics therefore risks ignoring a potentially crucial component in the study of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. So now they're even in the Lancet are talking about toxicity that's going on. And if people are weight loss resistant, there may be a reason why that is happened. So I want you to think of this. Where are toxins stored? Please don't say the liver, guys. Toxins are stored in fat cells. Where are toxins metabolized? In the liver. So fat cells or toxins are stored in the fat cells, which is why if you ever noticed someone had cancer and they underwent chemotherapy and they gained a lot of weight and they couldn't use it, that chemo is stored within the fat cells and the liver needs the enzymes in order to be able to metabolize and excrete it. But a lot of times if it can't, that fat is just going to stay there. So here's a question I'm going to ask. Could it be that the body is protecting you from toxic exposure that the liver cannot properly eliminate? This is why toxicity is huge. Could it be the reason why you constantly hit a weight loss roadblock is because you are in fact toxic? Could it be that a solution is to feed the liver the proper nutrients to metabolize toxins? And this is basically what detox is. And I know all the nutrition people and the dietitians are going to say, but the liver and the kidneys detox for free. And I'm like, yes, they do. But that also depends on the dose of toxicity. That depends on the dose of the toxicity. And you can get so much toxin overload and decreased function of the liver that it just can't do it anymore. So yes, you have to feed the liver the right things in order so that it can start to remove fat, metabolize it, and get rid of it, and be able to excrete it through the gastrointestinal system as well. Now, I want to give you a really interesting clinical example. This was a woman, awesome woman. She was doing everything perfect. And then all of a sudden, I see like her thyroid autoantibodies just jump up for no reason. You know when it happened? Right when the school year started. So I'm like, okay, all right, something's happening here. And then one of the things is that she started having some issues with her menstrual cycle. And then she said, now I'm starting to gain a lot of weight and I don't necessarily know why. And then I started to put two and two together. And I thought, you know what? I said, you know what I want you to do? I want you to test where you work and your home. I want you to test that for mold. And then I want you actually to do a mycotoxin test. And when we got the results back, her body is full of mycotoxins, aflatoxin, ochratoxin, and citrinine. And you can see the amount of ochratoxin in her just absolutely through the roof. Now, if you look at what these mycotoxins actually do, they're associated with hepatotoxicity. Why is that important for her? Well, because she was having some menstrual cycle issues, and this has to do with the metabolization of her estrogens. It's also involved with immunotoxicity, increased oxidative stress, neurotoxicity, carcinogenicity, damage to the kidneys, gastrointestinal issues, and reproductive toxicity. So there are a lot of things. These things can influence these things. And so she was having toxic mold exposure. And now we're trying to figure out where, in fact, it's coming from. So finally, what happened is her liver just didn't have the enzymes to be able to metabolize those things. So she started hanging on to fat a lot more. And also the liver was under so much stress that she couldn't metabolize her estrogens, which is why she started having terrible, terrible menstrual cycle issues as well. And mold is tough, guys. I know a lot of people are going to try to reach out to me with questions about mold. Mold is tough because many times you don't see it. And many times it's very tough to get people to start testing for something that they don't see it, because they don't necessarily feel it, especially if they just feel lousy all the time. So now one of the things that we have to do with her is we have to make sure that that we're protecting her until she gets out of the situation that contains a lot of mold. Okay. So what's the hierarchy, guys, of weight loss? Number one, the first thing is you have to handle your inflammatory levels first and foremost. People will have a hard time losing weight if you stay inflamed. Number two, you have to start addressing your insulin levels. Number three, detoxification. The liver and the kidneys detox for free. That depends on the dose. And then start working on exercise. And then finally, start looking at your macros as far as your fat, carbohydrates, your proteins, things like that. But the biggest thing is you have to be non-inflamed. And that's why, after about 4 weeks, we do a 4-week follow-up with people. We'll say, yeah, I'm already starting to lose weight. I'm like, congratulations, you just lost a lot of inflammation. And that's one of the first things that can happen. But then you also have to address your insulin levels. Who do we measure insulin in people? I would say probably about 90% of people we're measuring, not their A1C, not their blood sugars. Yeah, we'll measure that too. That just comes with the testing. But we are measuring their insulin levels. And that's what if your doctor's not measuring it, they're doing you a tremendous, tremendous disservice. So remember this, when it comes to all these medications, things like that, the end result should be better health, not just a number on a scale. Okay. The number on a scale should really just be a bonus. And in fact, you should be losing fat. You shouldn't be losing muscle. There's a way that you can measure that. And if it's just pounds that you are just chasing after, then just cut off your arm, cut off your leg, and you'll weigh less. You won't be as functional, but at least you'll weigh less. So the end result should always be better health. The number on the scale should just be a bonus. But the problem is, guys, when you're on these meds and they're increasing insulin secretion and they're increasing insulin resistance, guys, remember, even the proper medical treatment of type 2 diabetes, just the lab example that I showed you, it's bad news. And that's why you have to be on the medication, they say, for the rest of your life, because when you ramp up insulin secretion so much and there's an insulin resistant issue, dropping your insulin levels down is just going to be a never ending situation. It's a game that you cannot win. So that's why you need to start doing those things. One of the biggest things that I can tell you is work on becoming more sensitive to insulin. If you're having weight loss issues, one of the things you got to do is you got to look deeper. You have to look deeper. Are there hormone issues going on? Are there gastrointestinal issues going on? Are there energy and mood issues? And this is why when you look at the whole Swiss watch, all of these organ systems need to be working at full function, because when one of them starts, when there's a break, then it's going to affect how everything else functions. That's why we say the big toe, guys, controls the heart. And when you laugh at that, give me your big toe and I'll smash your big toe with a hammer, and then we'll take your blood pressure, we'll take your heart rate, and we'll see that everything affects everything. And you got to stop going to the specialist, because the specialist, in my opinion, is someone who knows more and more about less and less until finally they are experts in nothing. And this is why, guys, you got to work on connecting the dots. And that's why our next event, our inflammation talk, Tuesday, May 14th, 6:00 p.m. This is an in-person event. Get registered for that, please. This is where we start bridging the gap. This is where we start working together. If you're from the Chicagoland area, make sure that you register for that. And we'll even reach out to you and confirm that day, because we treat every single person like you are our date. So we want you to have an unbelievable, awesome experience. So make sure that if you do in fact register for that, please make sure that you show up. All right. So Tuesday, May 14th, you can register for it if you follow our link tree on our social media platforms. And then next week. So I'm thinking about doing a question and answer. Let me know if that's something that you would want. So do a question and answer. Unless I come up with a topic during that time, but We'll see. But it'll probably be a question and answer. So, guys, make sure that you're joining us every week on Monday around 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. And we'll be doing a question and answer and be able to take some of your questions and be able to answer those as best as possible. So, guys, if you didn't watch the first part, go back and watch the first part. I hope you enjoyed the second part. And, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure that you like our page. Make sure you follow our page. Thank you guys for all of the wonderful comments as well. I'll go back and read those. And also for some of the not so awesome comments, I love you too. And my question to you is who hurt you? Who hurt you? Oh my goodness. So guys, be well, be blessed. We'll talk to you guys soon. And I hope this helps you on your journey. And I hope it brings to you better health. So guys, be well. And we will catch up with you guys next week for a question and answer. Be well, guys.